I'm Carla.
I'm Courtney. And
We're not the Smiley Twins.
And class is in session.
Class is in session. Okay, today on an episode of Not Just Lip Service, we have quite an informative one that we're excited about. I think it's good. I'm joined by our Chief Legal Officer, Courtney Walker, who has been on multiple podcasts with us before, and we're going to talk about something that's really difficult for people to understand. And I say that because it was difficult for us to understand, for you to understand, for me to understand, and then people just have such twisted viewpoints on what this means, what the laws are, who can own XYZ, physicians, med spas. It's fascinating. So lucky you if you're listening to this, because Courtney is going to break it down. And if you're not watching, I encourage you to hop on over to YouTube and watch, because she has a beautiful whiteboard that she's written on. And we're going to go over MSO structure and what that means.
Yeah, just the basics. And my mom is a retired school teacher, and the whole time I created this, all I could hear her say is, best handwriting.
Yeah, different colors, engagement.
Yes, this is my attempt at attorney's best handwriting. So we're going to talk about just the general idea, like a really zoomed out approach of what is an MSO. How does that play into a med spa? And you hear things like, physician's ownership, who can own a med spa? I have to own it. I remember when we first started, someone said, no, the physician has to own 51% of the med spa. So we're going to zoom out and then look at a picture, talk about some things, and then an attempt to zoom in as far as we can without getting into the nitty gritty of like the details of what the contract needs to be.
Yeah.
So
First, what is an MSO?
Yeah. Well, I was going to say first, why does this all exist?
Okay.
So this all exists because of a legal concept called the corporate practice of medicine. So in its most basic form, what the legislatures and the courts have said is a entity, an LLC, a PLLC, or an entity, an LLC, a corporation, does not have a medical license. They didn't go to med school. So an entity can't practice medicine. An entity can't practice law. An entity can't do these things. Only individual people licensed to do those things can do them, which makes sense.
Sure.
But then how do you create businesses to protect yourself from liability? And how do doctors and other professionals, like-minded professionals, like licensed professionals, how do they create entities to do things like protect their house from,
the whole purpose of an LLC.
The whole purpose. They accidentally cut off the wrong leg in the middle of a surgery. And now, how do they protect their house? So, an LLC is a construct of state law. So, state government and our politicians come together and they create our LLC acts, which every state has one. And so, one of the areas that you can, as a physician or as an attorney or as another licensed professional, you can join with other licensed professionals and create a professional limited liability company, a PLLC.
Not a partnership.
Not
LLC,
a partnership, no.
As a lot of people
or
think
a professional corporation, a PC. And all that means is we have a group of similar license.
So can a doctor and a lawyer get together?
No. A group of similar licensees who come together in this LLC to do things at the most basic form, which is protect their house, protect liability, and to limit their liability to protect themselves. So going back to the corporate practice of medicine, an entity cannot practice medicine, but in the majority of the states, a professional entity does not violate the corporate practice of medicine because it is presumed, if it's set up correctly, that it is a group of professionals licensed. So anyway, that's a whole circular thing, but that's the reason that we have this whole construct is because of the corporate practice of medicine.
Can a nurse and a physician be in a PLC together?
No. In some states, an APRN and a physician, a physician's assistant and a physician, but just a general RN, no. Not the similar licensure, not performing similar activities. And even more so than that, certain doctors can't be in practices together in a PLC together. So I might be misquoting this, but like there's a lot of rules on like podiatrists.
Yeah.
Dentists, a dentist,
chiropractors.
Yeah, so not always, but for the most part, the law tries to make sense. So if two doctors would be practicing together in the same practice naturally,
Yeah.
it's highly likely they would be able to perform a PLC together. But would you ever have, a podiatrist and a dentist practicing in the same? No. So
There's also laws that prevent like podiatrists from performing certain acts of medicine.
Yeah.
Like a medical history physical in a lot of states. So they're not even performing, to your point, they can't provide the same service.
Yeah, they need to be similar.
Yeah.
And even outside of medicine, like I mentioned, attorneys, accountants, like we can't perform these professional companies together. And all that does is it goes back to things like corporate practice in medicine because state law says an LLC, a general partnership, or whatever,
Cannot
perform medicine, but a PLLC can if it's owned by all doctors because they're all licensees.
Right. So before we get into to MSO, the one thing I think that's very practical for our listeners is, should a nurse form a PLLC?
The only time I think a nurse should form a PLLC is if you are forming it with a bunch of nurses doing the same exact thing and you are creating a business of like licensees, like similar licensees of nurses. But if it's just you, no. There's no reason. And even further than that, you think about like attorneys, for example. If we're all practicing together, we're all handling different cases, PLLCs and professional corporations, they go a step further than just LLCs, and they say, we understand that each person in this company has professional liability because they're managing their own cases. So you're able to segregate out some liability even a step further
From your partner.
Who is also performing surgery, for your partner who's, taking on a class action lawsuit.
Yeah,
like,
sure.
You're able to even have more.
That makes sense.
But if you're one person.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just.
But that's also the reason why, because my other question was going to be, well, why do doctors do that then? It's because it then takes it that step farther and says, okay, we can be in practice together, physician A and B. If you chop off a leg, though, you ain't going to run our whole business into the ground because you have a kind of siloed liability within our PL.
Yeah. And even, I love doing a zoomed out approach. I love doing a why because my hope is that it connects the pieces, and then people who are listening or people who are in Smiley Aesthetics, are like, oh.
Yeah.
Because even something that everyone's familiar with is, you having your own malpractice coverage.
Yeah.
So in a PLLC situation, the company itself would have coverage that would essentially pay an attorney if the company was named. But again, the company's not practicing medicine.
Yeah.
A company can't practice medicine.
Yeah.
And then each individual would have their own malpractice. So that's like if nothing has clicked thus far, maybe that will be a turn on the light bulb for someone. It's like, oh, okay, situations where each person would have an individual malpractice policy. That's a good PLLC situation. That's a good PC situation.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then last question about that. If a nurse forms a PLLC or two physicians form a PLLC, can anyone else who is not a physician have a membership interest in that PLLC?
In most states, it's very, very limited. Right. So, and that is usually defined by state law. If there are restrictions, it's in state law. You usually would find it in the general like professional corporation statute. So that's like in the business law section. There might also be something in the medical section. So whether it's the Board of Medicine or the regulatory body for that, they'll define, like in Tennessee, it is defined who can own one together.
Right.
But I mentioned that there's, I think maybe California, a physician's assistant can own like 49% with a doctor. So there's some state law that understands that it's not uncommon for a physician and a physician's assistant or a physician and an APRN to be in the same practice.
Sure.
So they should be able to own that. But that's state specific. All of this stuff is state specific, but that's kind of where you would go start if you were trying to look and see what the laws of your state are.
Okay. So
now
how do we get around
that gets us to this, which then creates this whole conundrum because we have physicians or licensees who are really great at what they do. They spent lots of time, lots of money learning their trade. but that does not mean they know anything about business. They don't know about marketing. They don't know about payroll. They don't know about all the
And they
things.
shouldn't have to know.
And they shouldn't have to.
Yeah.
And all they really want to do is to go to school, graduate, make lots of money,
And practice medicine.
and practice medicine. So that creates this structure of how can we enable a professional corporation or LLC is what it says over there if you can't see or can't read it. And in the circle, we have physicians, APRNs, PAs, the people who, and like we mentioned, in some states, they can own them together. In some states, they can't. But the point is, these are all individual licensees in their respective professions.
Right.
And they can perform or they can join and create these professional corporations or LLCs together. So how do we help these individuals and these businesses actually run the business so they can use their license to do the medical services? So that creates what is called a management company. And it is essentially just a management company. It is what the company that deals with all the nuts and bolts. So I put some examples. The office lease is not uncommon for the management company to, either manage the lease itself or to be the named person in the lease. Non-provider staff, so receptionist, marketing person, attorney,
HR.
everything that goes along with running a, what's more than just a one-man shop, everything that would go along with that. Accounting, equipment, they can own and supply all the furniture in the building. They can be responsible for providing the supplies, the billing, the IT, the marketing. Literally, the list can go on and on and on. The only thing that the management company cannot do is a management company cannot practice medicine, because that is the job of the professional company, the PLLC, the PC, and the licensed professionals who are the owners of that company. So you'll see in the center, I have this big box that says management service agreements. Because it really is agreements and things that connect these two, the arrows that go to both ways. In this land lives lots of contracts, and all the contracts do say, here is what you are authorized to do. And then by way of just transferring through the contract, the physician or the APRN or PA can then tell the management company what they authorize the management company to do. And Mary has said this a couple of times that I say this, and now she's like, it's like one of my catchphrases. You can put anything in a contract. You can spell out that your staff, your non-provider staff, must wear all black scrubs. I mean, that's something that can be in an agreement. Like you can what the hours are. What products you want to use, definitely something that goes through this management service agreement. It's the clinical responsibilities and delegation, because again, only these people can practice medicine. These people cannot.
Right.
So the physician, APRN, or PA would tell the management company how, if they are managing staff underneath them, how they would like that to be managed and through delegation. But that all lives in these contracts that are between the two parties.
And I want just as an important note, it's a contract between the two parties. So this doesn't mean that the physician makes it. I mean, it could, I guess, but if I run this part of the company, it's me and the physician, by example, getting together and deciding.
Yes.
It doesn't mean that he or she has to be like, oh, everyone wears black and there's only two people and there's, I don't know, they wear blue ink, they use blue ink pens. You don't have to agree to, the point is, like, it can be a dual agreement on what's going to happen. So a healthy relationship is a physician who knows, or APR or PA who knows nothing about how to manage people. The people who are running this side of it help with said agreements.
Absolutely. This is definitely
Doesn't
where
all have to come top down.
It's definitely, it should be, in this black box in the center is where negotiation and compromise lives.
Yes.
And no negotiation and compromise, not necessarily in the way that you would think about it in the terms from like a lawyer's voice, which is, no, we're not paying that, like kind of strong on me people. No, it's having an appreciation for these two entities bring their individual expertise to the, and maybe the physician has something that's, a clinical component that's really important to them, and the management company can say, in our experience, that is not scalable.
Yeah.
So is it too restrictive? I mean, what my job in a management company is like, what is the law? What would the physician like? And where are we going to meet somewhere in the middle of things to compromise?
Yeah, thinking about the business side of things.
Thinking about the business. So
that's the whole point of the structure. They don't know that, they need help on those business side of things, strategy and everything else. So this person needs to have a say on all of those things. But ultimately, if I'm understanding you, it is the physician or whoever's in the PLC or whoever's in the other corporation, essentially delegating said tasks to other people. Is that right? Or is that a wrong?
So it just depends on how the contract came to be. I mean, the same with any other contract. Like, did the physician seek out this management company? Did the management company seek out the physician? And the management company essentially says, this is the way we operate. This is the way we partner with physicians. Are you interested?
Got it. Okay.
So I think it just depends on like how the contract originates.
Yeah.
But in a situation where, a physician or an APRN or PA professional company is looking for a management service organization, there are plenty out there. And I think they would start then vetting kind of of who fits them the best.
I'm really just overthinking it is really what it is. It's just two people sitting at this table making agreements. As long as the management company or the MSO, which is the bottom one, is not practicing medicine, then, which is really how almost any, you I guess you could have the accountant practicing you could, but you're just not.
In the legal world, we have, big law firms. More often than not, the managing partner of the law firm is also practicing law, has a full caseload.
Yeah.
It takes a really big firm for the managing partner to actually step away from practicing law and just manage the company. Because, then you lose your clientele, you lose your book of business, all kinds of stuff. The first firm I was at, actually both firms that I worked with prior to joining Smiley full-time was the managing partner was full-time practice, had a robust practice, both very well respected in their fields. And both law firms had an office manager who did things like manage the non-provider staff and hired and fired and interviewed and did all the things. They handled the equipment. They handled when a printer went out, contacting the right people.
Sure.
And both firms, they were able to hire that person on their to just be a part of the payroll of this big the big corporation. But if you're starting out or that's not something that you're interested in doing as a physician, the best bet is to find someone who already has that infrastructure in place to help you with things that literally are like, the printer is broken.
Yeah.
So imagine a surgeon, an in-office surgeon, who's like, the printer's not working.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, let me take my gloves off and
let me come out of the OR
and fix this printer. It's really just about, having interviews for receptionists and kind of delegating some of those things. If you're looking at it from the PC is the person who's seeking it out, they would be delegating those things.
Yeah,
but there are a lot of management companies who they say, we have this structure in place. If this is something you're interested, if this is something you're interested in, here is what it looks like,
for us med fall together.
For us to go into this joint venture essentially and operate a med spa and you maintain, which is really important in the medical space. It's where one of the widow makers of a med spa is making sure that whoever the medical director is or whoever is overseeing the actual practice of medicine, that they maintain that the ability to be impartial at all times. So when someone says, oh, I really am interested in getting such and such procedure, taking the medical judgment out of the business person's hands.
Right.
And putting it back in the physician or whoever's hands where it belongs, to take like a full appraisal of the person and to not get money hungry. And this is, regulation comes down in all areas. Like we saw this a lot with pain management clinics that are now highly regulated because this structure got real gray.
Yeah.
These contracts in the middle were really, really gray.
Yeah. I
And
think
what,
we're going to see the same,
yes,
essentially the same thing.
the same, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it doesn't have, I think, more of the stigma and national crisis as pain management does.
Sure.
But still, it's the same issue where, management company, for example, is incentivizing, which is what happened in the pain management world,
Right.
that the management company would then offer kickbacks and incentive programs to physicians for
Prescribed pain medicine.
prescribing
Yeah.
pain medicine.
Yeah.
And that's people lost their license, people are in federal prison, like
Yeah. You
all
can't
kinds
do
of
that.
stuff, because what the physician allowed the management company to do was
Interfere with.
rent their license
Yep.
and interfere with the practice of medicine, which harms the patients.
Yeah. So it's not fair to say that this is, I mean, it's not the correct use of words, but from a layman's perspective, this is the way you own a med spa together with, from the bird's eye view with a physician or whatever the case is. And you're not outright owning it together.
Sure.
You're essentially, the management company is making their money or their ownership part through.
For work.
the
I mean, they're
charge. Yeah,
working.
they're working and charging said med
Yes.
spa for their services, which is what makes, through these agreements, which is what makes it
Yeah.
okay.
And if you took this out, if you took out management service agreement, what you would create is a professional corporation or a professional LLC that essentially had to just hire someone to do all of these things.
Right.
They have to bill out all of their employee staff, and they have to have the infrastructure to provide the
Yeah.
management themselves.
Yeah. Or they're just third partying all of it as opposed to hiring one company like a Smiley Aesthetics who provides all of those things.
Yes.
Yeah. Just a group, management company getting all that together.
Yeah, it's like, six one way, half a dozen the other.
Yeah.
Like, you can employ all of these people, or you could go to
Yeah.
kind of a turnkey solution where
Yeah.
they've got it all figured out. And if they don't have it all figured out, like if we're vetting vendors and stuff for furniture, the management or the professional company is saying, like, that
Allow you
is
to do
something that you are
Yeah.
going to do according to this agreement. You are responsible for furniture. Do not ask me.
Yeah. I don't need to, I don't need to be,
Which is, to your point though, is they're getting paid for services performed.
Yes.
Which I'm not going to get super into the nitty gritty. I would love to, I'm not going to say this too loudly in case Mary's listening. We might do a Patreon series about, some of the things to look out for in management service agreements, but nowhere in a management service agreement should anybody be paid a percentage of what this company, the practice of medicine, makes.
Yeah.
This company can pay this company for services performed.
Yeah. Which is unrelated to how much medicine they do or do not do.
Yes.
It is set fees based on
And the opposite, that was saying that was coming from the position of like who's initiating this dating, who's looking out for it. That was the example of a professional company going to a management company.
Right.
But a management company going to a professional company.
Right.
Their services, if a management company is looking for a friendly physician to provide services related to the practice of medicine, the services are the services are the services. It does not matter if the management company has, a huge book of business that they are fielding through their offices and buying supplies and all of the things. You're paying for the services rendered. And as long as you can, in your contract, can prove that is exactly what you're doing, you're paying the person fair market value for the services rendered. No matter who initiated and what this contract says and who's getting paid what, as long as you can have some evidence that I'm paying for, the person who helps me clean my house, I'm paying them to do that service.
Right.
As long as you're doing those things and it's fair and equitable, then when the Board of Medicine comes knocking, you'll be okay.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was a lot. But this is one you might have to listen to again because it's a lot of information. But I do think you do a good job, and you can say it one more time. Of the bottom line is there's a lot of laws and rules on who can own what and who can be in a PLC and things like that, and who can own a med spa. And some states define that. Just because you read, that in Texas the physician has to own the med spa outright does not mean a nurse cannot be a full-fledged part of said operations of the med spa and make plenty of money off of the med spa in the right way, basically.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when it says, and that's the terrible thing about the internet, and even sometimes like a attorney blogs that I've read, or they're just wrong in the way that they phrase it.
Yeah.
And that just goes to the importance of every single word in a statute and stuff. That yes, a physician in almost every state, a physician or someone qualified to practice medicine must own a professional limited liability company, professional corporation that is practicing medicine.
Right.
That is true across the board. But if you notice the difference between that and a physician must own the med spa.
Yeah.
Like that's very different.
Yeah. Yeah.
And understanding like the differences between those two is really important when it comes to, if you're a nurse listening to this, making sure that you're not getting taken advantage of because the friendly physician is not so friendly and they want essentially to make a ton of money off of the work of others.
Yeah. I think it's critical too. You made another good point that not all attorneys are equal. And it's just like with anything else. If somebody says they know, they're an expert in XYZ, or that, you just have to vet. You really do, because now people are popping up left and right who are med spa experts. And it's like, really? And what evidence do you have of that? Because it's very, I think, specific and practical and takes time. So be very wary.
We had someone yesterday, I was telling Carly about this. So this part, drafted by attorneys, usually. You can find some online. I just saw one online that's for Etsy that's $30. If you're listening to this, do not go buy that Etsy template for $30 because I haven't bought it. I'm not going to. I'm not going to support this, but I guarantee it's probably not great. But some attorneys who quote unquote specialize, I pulled some fees. There's one for $10,000 online for this template agreement. One for $2,999 for a template agreement. And then you're going to get 40 pages of documents and assume that you are protected and put your name on it and think all things are great. And that is
just not the case.
It's just not the case.
The loopholes are endless, and that is tough.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things, we are on our Patreon account, we are going to start making some of these documents available, not for $10,000, and walk through the areas that if you were looking at it, because of course I have to be really careful and not provide anyone legal advice, which is knowing if you say, hey, Courtney, I'm in Florida and here are the facts, give me an opinion. Well, that's legal advice.
Right.
But if I can say in a management service agreement, generally, here are the things that you really want to look out for. Here's a template of agreements that we have entered into with our physicians in other states. But when you go into your state, paragraphs, this or this are the ones that you really want to pay attention to and you really want to hone in on. And just making those things more affordable for the people who, because obviously we are a company who prides ourselves in making this industry more accessible to the people who will not fall up here.
Yeah.
The people who are down here.
Yeah.
And I don't mean down there as in like a negative thing,
on
but
the board.
On the board. The people who their services will more along fall in this management company group.
Yeah.
And they will be providing some services like, if you're an RN, you would be providing services, but it would be through the direct delegation of somebody at the top of the board.
Right. Yeah, of course. Okay, if you all have questions, for the most part, you can reach out. But again, Courtney cannot give legal advice. And also, as you see, even just an agreement from somebody being $10,000, like, it's hard to answer. Any given question can take time. It just takes a lot to do, and she, again, can't give legal advice. So, and she's my attorney, not yours. So if you do have great questions, reach out. Because again, if we can bundle them together into another podcast or something that makes sense, we've gotten a bajillion questions about MSOs and more statements than anything that are like, oh, physician you can't own that spa. I'm like, okay, here we go. And that's a fact, but it's the wrong fact. It's just like, it's just like, it's true, but it's like a mission of the truth or something. I don't even know what it is. It's like weird.
Well, I mean, in like, the legal world, it's like I don't know if you ever had to deal with like logic tables and stuff. It's like, so yes, a physician must own an entity practicing medicine.
Right.
But a spa.
Yeah.
I didn't say a physician must own the medical spa because there's a lot of things that you can do
in the medical spa
that do not classify as a practice of medicine, like buying furniture.
Yeah. So again, if you have specific questions, reach out. Again, as a takeaway from every legal podcast I feel like we do, or a compliance or anything, it's just being incredibly wary of things you read on the internet and Google, even with Gemini and AI, which I think has improved things because I can at least see some citations and sources and it's improving things a little bit. You just be very wary. Please reach out with questions. Our Patreon is a wonderful source where Courtney's never giving legal advice, but is more educating on different things, including things like maybe an MSO series or whatever we're attempting to do. Shelly, our director of quality, recently did a good series on the IOM, and it's just things that we just don't know about on the other side of medicine, which is why MSOs exist, because there are other things out there other than just the practice of medicine that go into all this. And
that has to make it all work.
Yeah, like it just doesn't work without it. So logic would tell you that there are other people involved in the owning and operating of a med spa, obviously. And I do think that our antiquated views in this country of medicine and the physician power issues that we're definitely always bucking up against with the utmost respect means if someone says, oh, a physician has to own it, like we just accept it. It's like crazy. Where it's like, oh, I mean, how crazy would that be if one type of person was the only type of person allowed to own something? What?
Yeah.
Like, aren't we past that at this point that we say only if you went to medical school you're allowed to own a med spa? Doesn't that just sound crazy when you think about it logically? Mm-hmm. So anyways, continuing.
One of the, that just hit me too.
Yeah.
One of the things that we said earlier is if you took out this black box in the middle, that means, and I said this, that this group would have to hire the people to do this group.
Yeah.
Not hire the company because you're taking out the black box. They would have to hire the individuals. Something super important to point out is I did not say that in reverse. And we talking about logic, I did not say taking out this black box in the middle, this group can hire this group.
Right, because that is important.
This group can absolutely not employ this group because becoming an employee, this would be the boss, the management company would be the boss,
right?
Which means you put their independent medical judgment at risk because
tied to their employment.
Yeah. So I didn't say that, but I just want to be really clear. Like the only way that it could happen in another world other than this is for the professional entity to hire literal people to perform the tasks that a management company would perform for them.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll wrap this up. Per normal, www.patreon.com/MyAesthetics. We've got a bunch of good stuff on there, both free, but then unlock it all with the membership that we think is super affordable. You can find us on YouTube and then pretty much any other place that you find streaming things that stream that you listen to, podcasts, Apple, Spotify, all those types of things. We will be back with another episode in a couple weeks, and I'm sure we'll bring Courtney back for some more fun legal stuff.
Please let me know if you liked my drawing.
Yeah.
I told Mackenzie, I was like, you know what's crazy, because I'm such a visual learner, is that I've convinced myself that if you just see this, it will all make sense.
Yeah. And
so if you saw this and it made sense, please let me know.
Yeah. And if it didn't, like for a lot of us,
just lie to me.
Yeah, it's fine. All right. Thank you guys so much.